There is a beast that sleeps within you, ancient, powerful, untamed. They've tried to make you forget it exists, tried to bury it beneath layers of politeness and restraint, tried to convince you that its growl is something to be ashamed of, rather than something to be unleashed. They were wrong. What sleeps in your blood isn't your enemy. It's your oldest ally. The primal force that carried your ancestors through winter storms and bloody battles. The unstoppable hunger that drove Viking longships across merciless seas toward unknown shores. The raw power that split shields and shattered empires when fully awakened. Listen closely. Can you hear it stirring? That rumble deep in your chest when challenges appear. That heat in your belly when boundaries are crossed. That electric surge through your limbs when action, not words, becomes necessary. These aren't flaws to be corrected. They're ancient signals, older than language itself, telling you a simple truth your ancestors never forgot. You are not just flesh and bone and easy bruises. You are descended from wolves who conquered winter, from warriors who laughed at death, from men who saw impossible odds as worthy opponents rather than reasons to retreat. The Norse called it hamrammer, the ability to channel beast, strength in moments of need. Not just increased muscle power, but something far deeper. A complete transformation of mind and spirit that turned ordinary men into forces of nature. They didn't see this as supernatural. They saw it as deeply natural, as tapping into the primal current that flows through all things, most powerfully through those brave enough to surrender to its wild wisdom. Modern times have tried to tame this force in you, called it outdated, dangerous, something to be controlled rather than channeled. But control and suppression are different paths with different destinations. One masters the beast, the other cages it, where it grows sick, weak, and eventually turns against its jailer. You've felt this sickness, haven't you? The restlessness that comes from energy unspent. The frustration that builds when instincts are constantly denied. The emptiness that grows when part of yourself remains unexpressed year after year. These aren't signs of dysfunction. They're signs of a primal force demanding recognition. Of a beast too powerful to remain caged without consequences. In the sagas, the greatest heroes weren't those who fought without fear. They were those who felt fear's cold grip yet charged forward anyway, transformed by battle fury into something beyond their everyday selves. Berserkers, yes, but not mindless in their rage. Strategic, focused, channeling primal energy toward clear targets rather than suppressing it until it exploded in all directions. That same potential waits in you, not buried under your humanity, but forming its very foundation, the part of you that refuses to kneel when kneeling would be easier. The fire that burns hotter when winds of opposition try to extinguish it. The voice that grows steadier when threats loom larger. This isn't regression to something less than human. It's connection to something more than the weak, watered-down version of humanity that modern comfort has tried to normalize. The Vikings understood something we've been made to forget. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Safety is the prison of potential. The beast within you doesn't awaken on sunny days when all needs are met and all paths are clear. It stirs when storm clouds gather, when resources grow scarce, when threats approach from the horizon. These aren't moments to be avoided at all costs. They're opportunities for transformation, for becoming what you were always meant to be but could only discover through necessity's harsh teachings. Think of the ancient Norse ritual of sumbul, where warriors gathered before battle to drink, boast of past deeds, and make oaths about future ones. This wasn't empty bragging. It was conscious awakening of the primal force, reminding the beast within of its previous victories, feeding it with visions of glories yet to come, strengthening the bond between the man and the primal current flowing through him, so that when battle came, he fought not just with muscle and steel, but with the full force of something ancient and unstoppable. You've glimpsed this force in yourself, perhaps in brief flashes, moments when limitations seemed to fall away, when courage replaced calculation, when something deeper than thought guided your actions with a wisdom your conscious mind couldn't fully comprehend. These weren't accidents or anomalies. They were glimpses of your true nature breaking through the artificial constraints that usually contain it. Imagine what might be possible if you stopped fighting against this force and started fighting with it. If instead of caging the beast, you learned to run alongside it, to be guided by its superior senses, to be strengthened by its untamed power, to be transformed not into something less than human, but into the fullest expression of what humanity was before comfort and convenience became our highest values. The Norse concept of ulfethnar speaks to this transformation. Warriors who didn't just fight with wolf pelts on their backs, but with wolf spirits in their hearts, who moved beyond technique and strategy into a state of pure, focused power that made them virtually unstoppable on the battlefield. Not because they abandoned human thought, but because they integrated it with something older and in some ways wiser. The primal intelligence that knows exactly when to attack, when to defend, when to advance, when to withdraw, all without the hesitation that comes from overthinking. Your body remembers this wisdom even if your mind has forgotten it. It's written in your very cells, passed down through countless generations of survivors. Those who could not access this primal force when needed didn't survive long enough to become your ancestors. You are the living proof of its effectiveness, the descendant of those who successfully awakened the beast when circumstances demanded nothing less. So why has this force been vilified? Why have you been taught to fear it rather than honor it? Because unleashed primal energy cannot be easily controlled by external forces. It follows older laws than those written by men seeking power over others. It respects only what is genuine, only what has been earned, only what aligns with the deepest truths of existence, rather than the temporary fashions of society. Of course they fear it. Of course they work to suppress it. Of course they label it dangerous or toxic or outdated. What threatens control must be contained. What cannot be contained must be condemned. What cannot be condemned must be redirected toward purposes that serve the maintainers of the current order rather than the awakened individual. But the beast cares nothing for their fears or their labels or their attempts at manipulation. It responds only to authenticity, to courage, to the willingness to face what is rather than hide behind comfortable illusions. It awakens fully only for those brave enough to acknowledge its existence and wise enough to channel its power rather than unleash it randomly or suppress it completely. The path of awakening isn't comfortable. It wasn't meant to be. In Norse tradition, comfort bred weakness, challenge forged strength. The harsh northern winters didn't break our ancestors. They transformed them into something tough enough to not just survive, but thrive in conditions that would kill the unprepared within hours. The beast within you doesn't awaken through ease, but through welcome confrontation with the very forces most modern men spend their entire existence trying to avoid. Feel the stirring in your blood when I speak these truths. That's not coincidence. That's recognition. The beast acknowledging what the conscious mind might still deny. You were born for more than safety, created for more than comfort, designed to be dangerous to anything that threatens what matters most. Not dangerous to the innocent or the weak, but dangerous to the forces of falsehood and manipulation that would keep you caged and docile until your final breath. The Vikings didn't pray for peaceful existences. They prayed for worthy challenges through which they could discover the full extent of their capabilities. They understood that untested strength is merely potential, not power. That untriggered transformation is merely theory, not reality. That the beast remains asleep until necessity calls it forth and willingness allows its awakening. What necessities are calling to you now? What challenges are you facing that require more than your domesticated self can provide? What battles loom on your horizon that can only be won by someone willing to draw upon forces deeper than logic, stronger than fear, wiser than the cautious voice that urges safe retreat rather than courageous advance? These aren't abstract questions. They're invitations, catalysts for the very transformation we're discussing. Because the beast doesn't awaken through philosophical contemplation, it stirs when real stakes exist, when genuine threats approach, when authentic opportunities present themselves to those brave enough to seize them with both hands rather than watching them pass by while calculating risks and rewards until the moment for action has passed. In Old Norse, the word mat meant not just physical strength, but a deeper kind of power. The fundamental force that flows through all things, but concentrates in those with the capacity to channel it effectively. Your ancestors understood that this force couldn't be claimed through entitlement or wishful thinking. It had to be earned through action, through testing, through proving oneself worthy of wielding such power, through repeated demonstrations of courage and conviction. The beast responds to the same proof. It doesn't awaken fully for those who merely want its benefits without accepting its price. It reveals itself completely only to those who have shown, through consistent choice and action, that they can be trusted with the full measure of its primal force. Not trusted to keep it caged, but trusted to direct it wisely. Not trusted to deny its existence, but trusted to integrate it with conscious purpose toward worthy ends. What proof have you offered lately? What tests have you embraced rather than avoided? What actions have you taken that demonstrate readiness for the next level of awakening? The beast watches. It evaluates. It waits for evidence that its power won't be wasted on someone too afraid to use it or too undisciplined to direct it. The Viking warriors had a concept called full trui, a relationship with forces beyond the ordinary. Not blind devotion, but mutual respect between the warrior and the powers he called upon in times of need. This wasn't superstition, but recognition of a simple truth. We exist in relationship with forces we didn't create and can't fully control, but can learn to work with rather than against. Your relationship with the primal force within you operates on the same principle. You didn't create it, you can't fully control it, but you can develop a relationship of mutual respect, of conscious cooperation, of intentional alignment that allows its power to flow through you without overwhelming your human purpose or direction. This relationship begins with acknowledgement, with admitting that something wild and untamed exists within your chest, regardless of how deeply it's been buried or how strongly its existence has been denied. It continues with acceptance, with recognizing that this force isn't your enemy but a necessary part of your wholeness. Not something to be eliminated, but something to be integrated with the rest of your being. And it culminates in activation, in deliberately calling forth this power when needed rather than pretending it doesn't exist until crisis forces its emergence in ways that might be destructive rather than constructive. The Berserker who could channel battle fury at will was far more effective than one who entered that state randomly or couldn't access it when truly needed. So how do you awaken this sleeping giant? How do you rouse the beast that modern life has tried so hard to lull into permanent slumber, not through half measures or cautious experiments? The primal force responds to commitment, to full engagement, to throwing yourself completely into challenges that require everything you have, and then some. Physical training pushed to honest limits, cold exposure that shocks the system into remembering its inherent resilience, fasting that strips away the illusion of constant abundance and awakens ancient survival mechanisms. Controlled confrontation that teaches the difference between destructive aggression and protective power. Strategic discomfort that reminds your body and mind what they're truly capable of beyond the narrow confines of modern convenience. These aren't punishments, but invitations. Not suffering for suffering's sake, but deliberate engagement with the very conditions that have always awakened the beast in those willing to face them directly. Your ancestors didn't consider such challenges unusual or extreme. They were simply the expected path for anyone who wanted to discover what truly lay beneath the surface of their everyday selves. The Norse had a saying, "A ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are for." Your primal force doesn't awaken in harbors. It stirs when you venture into open waters. When you face the storms that would keep lesser men clinging to familiar shores, when you set course for horizons others can't even imagine, let alone reach. Set that course now, not tomorrow. Not when conditions seem perfect, not when doubts have been resolved and fears have been conquered, but now, in this moment, with whatever mixture of certainty and hesitation currently fills your chest. The beast doesn't demand perfection. It respects courage, especially the courage to begin before you feel completely ready, to act despite fear rather than waiting for fear to disappear before taking action. They wanted you tame, predictable, easy to influence and control. A shadow of what flows in your blood and beats in your chest. But tame creatures forget how to hunt. Predictable men never discover what waits beyond the boundaries of the expected. Controlled spirits never learn the exhilaration of breaking free from artificial limitations imposed by those who fear what they cannot comprehend. The awakening has already begun. With each word absorbed, each truth recognized, each stirring of something ancient beneath the surface of everyday awareness, the beast senses the changing tide. It feels the approaching storm. It knows, better than your conscious mind ever could, exactly what forces are gathering on the horizon, and exactly what will be required to meet them effectively. Trust this knowing. Honor this awakening. Embrace this transformation not as regression to something primitive, but as progression to something whole. Not as loss of civilization, but as reclamation of what civilization was meant to enhance rather than replace. The primal force that makes challenges become opportunities, obstacles become stepping stones, and ordinary men become living legends worthy of the sagas. The beast stirs, the primal force awakens, and you, standing at the threshold between what you've been and what you're becoming, face the most important choice of all. Will you fight against this awakening, trying to maintain the comfortable slumber of the domesticated? Or will you surrender to the transformation, allowing something ancient and powerful to merge with your modern consciousness, to create something neither could become alone? The Norse warriors would say the answer is written in your blood, that your ancestors watch from Valhalla, eager to see their legacy either honored or betrayed by your choice. That the beast already knows what you will decide, has always known, has been waiting patiently for this moment of recognition since the day you drew your first breath. What will you choose? The cage or the key? The harbor or the horizon? The safety of the known or the power of what waits beyond it? The primal force awakens. The beast inside you stirs, and everything changes from this moment forward.